November 19th was the 1000th day since the escalation of the Ukraine crisis in February 2022. From a lightning-fast escalation to a protracted seesaw battle and then to a deadlocked and attritional stage. More than 2 years have passed. Yet the Russian and Ukrainian troops are still fighting fiercely on the front line. And both countries' homelands are still frequently attacked by drones and missiles. Suddenly, news has emerged from the United States about loosening the restrictions on Ukraine's use of weapons. And all parties have begun to prepare for the possible return of Trump, who vowed to resolve the Russia-Ukraine conflict within 24 hours, to the White House after 1,000 nights. Where will this largest military conflict in Europe since the beginning of this century go? How far is the dawn? On February 24, 2022, Russia announced the start of a special military operation in eastern Ukraine. Ukraine immediately declared a national state of war. And the Ukraine crisis thus escalated since then. With the instigation of the United States and NATO, the Russian and Ukrainian sides have advanced and retreated in offense and defense, tearing a wound stretching thousands of kilometers in the heart of the European continent. In the first year, Ukraine lost large tracts of territory, but also achieved some victories in counteroffensives. And the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine became the main battlefield. In the second year, the Russian army captured Bakhmut, an important transportation hub in eastern Ukraine, while the Ukrainian army's counteroffensive failed and the front line fell into a deadlock. In the third year, the Russian army occupied more land in eastern Ukraine, and the Ukrainian army crossed the border and invaded Russian territory and took control of some areas. As the 1000th day of the war approached, Kiev seemed to receive more encouragement from Washington, according to Xinhua news agency citing U.S. media reports. U.S. officials said on the 17th that the Biden administration had allowed Ukraine to use U.S.-made long-range missiles to strike deep targets in Russia. This means that after repeatedly rejecting Ukraine's request for this, the Biden administration's policy of assisting Ukraine has undergone a major shift, which may increase Russia's war costs and limit the options for the Russian army to launch attacks and provide supplies to the front line, thus giving Ukraine a breather so far. The White House has not confirmed this. Zheng Hong, a research fellow at the Institute of Russian, Eastern European and Central Asian Studies of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, pointed out that the United States giving the green light is a strategic gamble. Russia has previously issued a clear warning to the West that if the United States and Europe do this, it will be regarded as direct participation in the Russia-Ukraine conflict and will trigger Russia's nuclear counterattack. If the Biden administration really gives the go-ahead, it can be said to be an irresponsible move, perhaps out of domestic political considerations, such as wanting to set political or security thresholds for the Trump administration's Russia and Ukraine policies. This change by the United States may further escalate the Russia-Ukraine conflict and set more obstacles to potential peace talks. Zheng Hong pointed out, it can be seen from this that the U.S. establishment or military-industrial interest groups do not want the Russia-Ukraine conflict to stop immediately. This also reflects the calculations, contradictions and divisions within the United States regarding the Ukraine issue. While the outside world is speculating about why the United States has changed course at this time and how Russia might respond, the front lines of Russia and Ukraine are preparing to face another harsh winter. Also on the 17th, the Ukrainian side said that the Russian army launched the largest-scale attack on Ukraine's power system since August this year, firing about 120 missiles and 90 drones. At the same time, the Russian army is making the fastest progress on the front line in eastern Ukraine since February 2020 and increasing military pressure on the northeast and southeast of Ukraine inside Russia. The Ukrainian army still controls the land captured after launching a ground operation in Kursk region in August this year. The Russian army has recently deployed more troops in the area in an attempt to expel the Ukrainian army. The Ukrainian side said that the two sides are engaged in fierce fighting there after more than 2 years of seesaw battles and attrition. What stage is the Russia-Ukraine war situation in? This winter is a key point. A senior Ukrainian official said, "The Ukrainian side will strive to improve its battlefield position to determine the starting position in future negotiations during the window period between Trump's election and Biden's departure from office." Both sides intend to intensify their offensives in order to strive for a more favorable military situation and gather more bargaining chips for negotiations. Zhang Hong observed from the respective advantages and disadvantages of Russia and Ukraine that Russian army has advantages in firepower, manpower and other aspects on the battlefield and is intensifying its offensive efforts on the front line in eastern Ukraine, especially in the directions of Krasny Lyman and Kupiansk, both in the north and south. However, Russia also faces some pressures. Firstly, the losses in manpower on the battlefield are not small, and continuous casualties will cause long-term harm to Russian society. Secondly, after the United States gave the green light, more than 200 military targets and infrastructure within 300 kilometers of the Russia-Ukraine border will become targets for the Ukrainian army to strike. And Russia will face security and military pressures looking at Ukraine. Data shows that from February 2020 to August 2024, the United States and Europe have provided approximately $195.4 billion in assistance to Ukraine. However, as winter approaches, Ukraine is in a difficult situation. For one thing, the frozen ground is suitable for the large-scale movement of mechanized troops, and Russia will seize this favorable climatic condition to intensify its offensive efforts before Christmas. For another thing, Ukraine's infrastructure such as power facilities was severely damaged into attacks by the Russian army earlier this year, and its power generation capacity has been halved. The power shortage will plunge Ukraine's economy and people's livelihood into difficulties, which is also regarded as a means for Russia to put pressure on Ukraine. The 1000th day of the Russia-Ukraine conflict is only 2 months away from Trump's possible return to the White House. This former U.S. president repeatedly criticized the scale of U.S. assistance to Ukraine during his election campaign and vowed to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict in a short time. This has raised doubts about the prospects of U.S. military assistance to Ukraine and the Western United Front. All kinds of signs indicate that the Ukrainian side is reconsidering the exit way of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Ukrainian President Zelensky said last week that Ukraine must do its utmost to end the war through diplomatic means next year. However, he refused to conduct ceasefire negotiations before Ukraine obtains appropriate security guarantees. The Kremlin has stated that in June, Putin has already put forward the conditions for ending the war. That is, Ukraine must abandon its ambition to join NATO and must withdraw from the for Ukrainian regions partly controlled by its army. People with inside information said that Trump's team is discussing peace negotiation plans for the Russia-Ukraine conflict, including the establishment of a military buffer zone stretching thousands of kilometers. Is this protracted conflict approaching the crossroads of war and peace? The essence of the Russia-Ukraine conflict is the strategic game between Russia and the West led by the United States. With Trump about to take office, the attitude of the United States in refusing to have dialogues with Putin in the past is expected to change. The United States may adopt a two-pronged approach of both fanning the flames and engaging in dialogue and negotiation, which will be a major change. The possibility of a strategic compromise between the United States and Russia on the Ukraine issue has begun to emerge. Zhang Hong pointed out, however, so far, there is no final version of Trump's team's peace negotiation plan. In Zhang Hong's view, the different versions of the plan revealed by the U.S. media are actually tests of the endurance of Russia and Ukraine. Trump intends to facilitate the Russia-Ukraine peace talks and the strategic detente between the United States and Russia. But the prerequisite is that all parties are willing to cooperate. Judging from the current situation, the positions of all parties are far apart. And there's still a long way to go before they can return to the negotiation table. There is no consensus within the United States, between Russia and Ukraine, between the United States and Europe, or within Europe. Zhang Hong noticed. The Democratic Party, the Republican Party, Congress, the Pentagon and the Central Intelligence Agency in the United States have different opinions. Russia and Ukraine have huge differences on issues such as territory and joining NATO. European countries have a completely different perception of the Ukraine issue from that of the United States and Ray worried that other countries in the post-Soviet space or Eastern European regions will become the next Ukraine. Within Europe, chaotic signals are being sent out. German Chancellor Scholz took the initiative to call Putin, while Italian Prime Minister Meloni said that the G7 will continue to firmly support Ukraine as the most significant geopolitical event since the end of the Cold War. The Ukraine crisis has a complex historical context and also has a profound impact on the world situation and international order. Zhang Hong emphasized four aspects. Firstly, the relations among major powers have deteriorated and the geopolitical tensions among them have risen. In the past, major powers had rivalries without breaking off relations. Now, there is only competition and no cooperation between Russia and the United States as well as between Russia and the West. And the situation is very dangerous. Secondly, the trend of international political bloc formation has developed. NATO's eastward expansion has led to the United States and Europe joining forces, while Russia has drawn closer to North Korea and Belarus, which has actually intensified the trend of bloc confrontation and group politics. Thirdly, the global economic order has been impacted. In the past, the United States carried out decoupling of the global industrial chain on the grounds of values and security. Now, the protracted Russia-Ukraine conflict has increasingly highlighted the damage to the global industrial chain. Trump's taking office may bring more chaos to the world economic order. Finally, this is also a struggle for the international order between Russia and the West, and the risk of the escalation of confrontation still exists. After the Cold War, the existing international order has been dominated by the West. Russia opposes the new colonialism, unilateralism, and hegemony of the West in regional affairs. At present, Trump intends to make a strategic compromise with Russia and hopes to focus the diplomatic and military resources of the United States more on the Asia-Pacific region. However, there is still a huge gap between the demands of the United States, Russia and Ukraine. Besides the four regions in eastern Ukraine and Crimea, Russia also demands to have a say in the European security order and to establish a long-term and stable security framework with the West. Once the negotiations fail, the confrontation may also escalate.